she has been a critical leader in the fight for 15, which is especially another reason why we look to her voice now, as the fight for 15 has hit a major roadblock in the form of Democratic malfeasance and incompetence, refusing to essentially get past the parliamentarian and antiquated bullshit obstacle to progress, essentially, that Kamala Harris could easily override if she wanted to. And Kshama Sawant, as we've been mentioning, has been calling this out a little bit, as well as calling out progressive members of Congress for not fighting harder, for not being more vocal, and for not using their numerical balance, as she says, to refuse to vote on the stimulus bill unless it includes the $15 an hour. Zach, we were talking a little bit about this strategy earlier this morning. Do you want to go over a little bit the value in it and how exactly the squad can use their numerical balance to maybe actually get $15 an hour if they wanted to?
Yeah, so this is something that was kind of irking me last night. So I have this really bad habit of like, you can all drag me, but I like to just get a little stoned in the middle of the night and turn the shower on really, really hot and then just sit in there and let the steam kind of go. And I was getting increasingly worked up about this like current lack of opposition in American progressive politics. And I just was starting to chart out like a list of everybody who could be nominally considered progressive in the House, right? And, we know that the balance in the House is, it's like, what is it? It's like 421 to 411, right? Or no, sorry, 221 to 211. Excuse me. That would be a ridiculous number of congressmen. 221 to 211 right now. I think there's 3 current absent people, like 2 people dead and 1 person resigned. So anyway, that's the current balance. So we know that there's a 10 votes, right, that they have because Nancy Pelosi completely botched the congressional re-election, lost a bunch of seats in the House, actually thinned their majority, right? But what does that mean for progressive? Well, it actually empowers progressives if they want to wield it. So I'm just going to read out a few names to people, and you shout out this name if you think that they don't qualify as somebody who has made a political career off of advocating for a policy at least like $15 a minimum wage. Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Jamal Bowman, Mondaire Jones, Marie Newman, Ilhan Omar, Cory Bush, and Ayanna Pressley. If all of those people and no one else, there are plenty more Congress people who have said that they would fight for a $15 minimum wage.
Katie Porter,
exactly. So that's 11 votes right there. If you just get your band of people together and say, fuck you, kick this shit back to the Senate we're sending our bill with $15 an hour in it and eat shit. We're not voting for anything that doesn't have $15 minimum wage at the federal level. We ran this campaign on it. Joe Biden himself promised this to the American people. Do we need to roll tape? Obviously, I don't think they're going to do this, but if they did band together, they could just tell the fucking rest of the party to kick rocks and pull a Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema style move and just say no.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kshama Sawant is really calling that out, being vocal on this issue. As she says, here, Joe Manchin and the corporate politicians have forced their priorities through. Why can't Bernie and the squad do the same for working people? If they demand $15 is in the COVID relief bill, working people and movements will back them up. We will organize in the streets until we win. And I think that's a good point because it's not like Bernie and the squad haven't, fought for the $15. It's not like they don't want it. But they're really not fighting as hard as they could be. They're not being as vocal as they could be. And they're not truly organizing their fellow Americans and constituents in the streets like Sawant suggests here in order to really make this demand heard and put that pressure on the politicians. I think that's a good segue into a clip I wanted to play from a recent appearance of Sawant's on the Bad Faith podcast hosted by Virgil Texas and Brianna Joy Gray. This was a great bit where she kind of
explained. Of the left was saying, here you go. When a section of the left was saying, yes, absolutely, there is an opportunity instead of just voting for Pelosi as speaker, actually the squad should withhold the vote and use it as a moment to build real pressure for Medicare for all. But what we said, and at least what Socialist Alternative said, was that it's not just as some sort of drama, sort of meaningless political theater, but to actually use the force the vote tactic in the context of helping to build mass rallies and conferences around Medicare for all. But at that time, AOC and also sections of DSA, they said that, well, this is not the moment to use your political capital. And in fact, I remember AOC in her response to force the vote, and I think she genuinely meant this. She said, instead of this, we should fight for something winnable, which is $15 an hour. Well, here we are talking about $15 an hour. And again, Biden, Harris, Schumer, Pelosi, all the stalwarts, big business stalwarts of the party are throwing excuse after excuse. It's the parliamentarian, it's the rules, it's the decorum, it's Joe Manchin. So I think what we have to point to is sort of the endless logic of making excuses for the Democratic establishment. So today it's this excuse, tomorrow it's another excuse. Yesterday it was Medicare for all, today it's $15 an hour. This is a failed strategy. I think that's what we need to point out. It's not so much about whether AOC is genuine or not. The question is the strategy of not being willing to go into open combat against the establishment, is that working or not? And it's clearly not working.
Yeah, that is the perfect place to stop this clip, because that is exactly the conversation that we need to be having. And I think it's so important, and I'm so appreciative that she made that point, because that's exactly what it is, right? It doesn't matter. I don't give a fuck if AOC has pure motives or not, right? But I need somebody with effective motives. I need somebody with effective strategy, right? And that's exactly what Kshama Sawant is saying. She's saying, we don't have time on the left to consider motivations. We have time to consider what is going to be effective, what is going to get results. And this personality contest is a distraction.
Exactly. And I think it's very important too that Sawant called out AOC and honestly the rest of the squad and people at large who weren't so hot on force the vote and called it, ineffective, said that, well, we need to wait and use our political capital on something like $15 an hour that we can actually win. This fantasy that was espoused by people like AOC in this tweet, which was referenced by Sawant in that clip. She says, in contrast, you can use leverage to push for things that can happen and change lives, i.e. a $15 minimum wage vote in the first 100 days, doable.
Well, and here she's gonna fucking, this is gonna happen. I want to give her the time to make this mistake before I call her out for it, but I know she's gonna fucking vote for this $1.9 trillion package without the $15 minimum wage in it. And then what? And then what the fuck, man? Like, yeah, I understand there's a fuck ton of other fucking congressional people that didn't vote for it, and they are also my enemies, and they're also problematic, but this is somebody who has made a fucking career, has made their entire political presence about these issues, and at every single time just fucking folds like everyone else. You know what Bernie Sanders said one time he told I think it was like a campaign, I think it was probably a rally, right? But he talked about how he'd cast a lot of lonely votes, right? He had voted for his conscience, with his conscience a lot, right? He was the guy who was there. I just last night, I think I sent you that old piece that Matt Taibbi wrote about Bernie Sanders from 2005, where he was like, talking about like just the trudges of what it's like to actually be a congressperson, right? But he was there fighting those fights, all unsung, all by himself. There was no squad. It was just Bernie, right? Which is why I give a pass to Bernie right now, because I think he's tired and old and he doesn't fight as hard as he used to. But what the fuck is AOC's excuse? She's a young blood. She's just cutting her teeth in Congress, and she's already making Bernie level folds. What the fuck, man? No, and what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to continue to support you regardless of the fact that you're fucking up? I don't know. I don't think so. I think that I don't know.
Yeah, and honestly, it just kind of feels like betrayal right now when we see these members of Congress that aren't fighting as hard as they promised they would. And you have to remember, guys, despite the fact that these Congress people like AOC have been in Congress for a bit now, you have to remember when they were elected, it was on this very kind of bold and revolutionary promise or strategy that they would be taking over the Democratic Party, that they would be in opposition to actors like Pelosi and to people that were in favor of these basic, principles, things like a $15 an hour minimum wage or Medicare for all, principles on which they were elected. And so it's not so much that they're total sellouts. It's just that it's really disappointing to see them get into Congress and then not be as vocal or as oppositional as we want them to be. In my opinion, this, abandonment of the $15 an hour and blaming the parliamentarian, just total weakness from the Biden-Harris administration. If I were AOC, I would be, declaring my candidacy for 2024, being like, this is unacceptable. We can't let this be what the Democratic Party represents. I'm going to make sure that I challenge this administration unless they change course now. She has serious political leverage. She has serious popularity and celebrity that she can use against this administration. She has the ability to make the media pay attention to her. She has her Twitter, which is honestly an underrated tool, but much like Donald Trump's Twitter, she can, make.
Yeah, how many followers does AOC have?
So many, and much like
Holy
Republicans,
shit, 12.6 million.
And much like how Republicans were terrified of Trump going after them on Twitter, she could similarly wield her celebrity and popularity, especially with the youth, really, call out these criminals, call out these enablers of this violence. People being paid $7.25 is unacceptable in the richest country in the world. It's truly unacceptable that these members of Congress are not being more vocal about this and doing what Sawant is honestly suggesting. And it just really exposes the hypocrisy on the force the vote strategy. Here too, Sawant says that, let me find this. She says, Progressive Squad can still force $15 an hour into the COVID relief bill. It will take political courage. They will have to stand up to the Democratic establishment pressure, withhold their votes, call on millions of supporters to back them up. The left needs a fighting strategy to win. So here she's basically implicitly saying that the left in Congress is not currently employing a fighting strategy. And if they don't soon, they will not win. They need to withhold their votes. They need to recognize and utilize their actual political capital in this very key moment. They do need to call on millions of supporters to take to the streets, to, be very vociferous in their demands right now. This is unacceptable.
And they have the power, right? We already laid it out. Those 11 people, those 11 individuals who constantly go on shows like, BreadTube and Democracy Now! And all this shit, right? And they want to be a part of the progressive left, but they can't band together to do one fucking ounce of political courage each. That's it. No. You band together, you say, you know what? I'm not fucking voting for this. I'm going to have a spine. I can't sign my name on the abandonment of $15 minimum wage. One of the key campaign promises, one of the few fucking reasons that, Joe Biden convinced a bunch of working people to plug their nose and vote for his stupid, geriatrically, cognitively impaired fucking it's fucking ridiculous. And it makes me mad. It makes me fucking disgusted, actually. And I'm floored that this isn't happening because there's no reason not to do this, right? There's no reason to not to exercise this power. There's no reason to not say, I'm not fucking doing this because this is going to hurt my community and my constituents. My constituents need $15 an hour. Full stop. I'm not going to vote against this. Joe Biden, you promised the people this. I don't give a fuck about a Senate parliamentarian.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yep. It's just baffling. And it's bad politics, right? Like, it's ridiculous. Like, I can't believe, AOC has a huge bully pulpit, right? She could be.
Why does no one ever talk about that?
Going to war.
Yeah. Why does no one ever talk about that?
Yeah. I was baffled when I saw 12 fucking million people follow her. Holy shit.
I always go on this show and say that. I'm like, AOC is so much bigger of a celebrity than people recognize, and she doesn't use that in the proper way. Like, she needs to really, really weaponize that following and that celebrity against the Democratic leadership to make them hear the actual demands, frustrations, the angst, honestly, of the American population right now, as we suffer without money, without these checks that were promised initially. And yeah, they're finally going to be coming out later this month, I believe. But, too little, too late. Honestly, people are literally dying out there with hospital bills, facing evictions. Like, this stuff is not something that we can just wait around and twiddle our thumbs. Meanwhile, they already impeached Trump. Like, what the fuck was that about? How much time did you waste doing that? AOC wants to talk about spending your political capital and actually obtaining goals for working class people. What the fuck was impeachment? What was that? Why did you guys waste so much goddamn?
Well, we can find the fucking tweet of AOC being like, it's important to have a record of.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's not to say that AOC and the squad are not better than the other corporate Democrats. They definitely are.
But they're
better.
Not living up to their own fucking standards, their own fucking promises.
They weren't elected to just be a little bit better than all the other corporate Democrats. They were elected to be activist movement leaders in the halls of Congress.